Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Luke Smith, not only from Silverstone Gardening and the Australian Lawn Garden podcast, but he's now also from the Moqo app. So he's created an app which I wanted to get him on to talk about because I think it's an awesome idea. It's called Moqo and it's mainly to help lawn mowing and garden maintenance people quoting projects. And I mentioned in the episode that it always seems to be a good invention when someone has created something that they have a need for that then gets made available for the public, and that's what's happened here with Luke's Moqo app. So we talk about that in the episode as well as touching on his business course that he has, and also still talking about Silverstone Gardening, his garden maintenance business, and how that's going. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Luke Smith. Luke, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast again. Third time lucky. I'm not
Third
sure.
time lucky.
It could be unlucky. I'm not sure if there's been someone on three times. Actually, Peter Donegan would have been on three times. I don't know don't know if Graham Rowe has been on three times or just twice, but you have been on three times, so thank you for coming back on.
Graham Rowe talks enough that he only needs to be on once and it still counts as three times.
Correct. It does. Well, on
So
your podcast, more so.
yeah, well, I mean that was almost 3 hours, and but he I'm in special rare air. Then is that the case?
Yeah, if that's what you want to call it, sure.
Is that because you keep having hope that we'll finally produce something worth listening to? It's like this is the third time that somebody might enjoy what we're talking about.
Yeah, hence third time
Yeah.
lucky. You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
You throw enough darts at the wall, one of them's going to stick.
Hopefully, this might be it.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted to get you on was because you've just released an app, which I think is awesome. I do like the name of it too, because it seems like it's a little bit descriptive, but also a cool sounding name, Moqo.
Yeah. Did you get what it means?
I assume it's mowing quoting.
It is. Look, you know what you're talking about. There you go.
I'm pretty smart.
And my sign's behind me.
Yeah, that's MOQO.
That's it.
Is that
Available on Apple and Android. There we go. Look, we'll plug straight away. You said you wouldn't have sponsors, and you're refusing the payment. I mean, I didn't offer the payment, but I didn't. Are you okay? Well, I'm paying.
I'll be sending you an invoice.
Okay, all right. I'll brace myself for $50,000.
So, when did the idea for creating an app start?
Well, it's a long story. I'll try and tell it quickly, and then we can expound on it. But
We've got 3 hours. That's fine.
We got 3 hours. We'll be Graham Rowe. He's got no chance. I got really unwell in 2020. For those who listened to the first podcast we did, they'll remember that. I was working in the field. I do maintenance more than landscaping. I was working in the field, started getting some symptoms, got diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, and 7 months later, I couldn't work in the industry anymore. And so in that period of time, I needed to hand my work over to all my employees. And one of the big sticking points was how do you get employees to quote those services? And so the long story short is we started working on a formula that could predict how long a lawn mowing job would take. And at the site, I was really quite skeptical that it would be accurate, and then ended up producing something that was frighteningly accurate, like surprisingly accurate. We wanted it to over predict the job by 1, 2, 3 minutes. And it was pretty much doing that every single time. Kept it a secret. And then about 2.5 years later, my granddad was like, why don't you sell the app if it works so well? And I was like, no, this is my secret weapon. Then over time, I thought, actually, he's got an idea. And we realized how expensive it would be, how challenging it would be, and went through the process. And 2.5 years later, we released something that's not even that, because that's not quite ready yet. But the second part of it, even more briefly, is a product applicator. Same problem, employees doing the work. You give them complicated services on how to apply herbicides, fertilizers, fungicides, insecticides, whatever, in the maintenance scene. That's quite common. And I was like, how do I trust these people to do the maths themselves? So we made a database where they can click on the product, say how many square meters it is, and it would tell them exactly how to apply it as per the label. No guesswork. So that is out right now, and quoting is coming soon. So was that nice and concise?
It was, yeah. So how soon is soon?
We've got a meeting tonight. Straight after this podcast, we've got a meeting to try and fast track it, because it was probably going to be 2 to 3 months to get it out. And the more people who sign up to the app, the quicker we can do it, because it just extends our budget. we've had a really like surprisingly strong, like we smashed every expectation we had on downloads. So it probably has meant that we can release it a little bit sooner, but it's, it might go from 3 months to 2 months or 2 months to one
Yeah.
and a half months. It's not like next week.
So possibly before the landscaping school has been released.
Yeah. So I will have recorded a course, done a national podcast tour with you involved, and then released an app in the time it took you to record and release your bloody landscaping
Oh,
course,
good things
right?
take time. Good things take time, so we can't rush these
Yeah.
things.
No.
So, one of the things because I listened to your podcast, it's a shorter one, the recent one where you were talking about the app in the
Yeah.
episode, and you were talking about how the struggles of working out how long things took because there's so many different variables that you come across on site. And I
Yeah.
saw in one of the comments about the app, someone said, "I don't know how to work because there's so many different things that happen on a site." So, how did you get around that kind of thing?
Well, there's two things. Some we're not going to be able to predict when things go wrong. So what we do is we go, this is what it should take when things go right, and we set the app to do 2 to 3 minutes. Oh, it depends on the job. The bigger the job, the more time. But there's a margin of area where it overquotes a little bit. And what we found is over the course of the day, the small things that do go wrong get covered up plenty, well enough by the little bit of overestimation you've got. But the second thing is that you can calibrate it to your speed. And so you can increase or decrease it per percentage. So if you're someone who absolutely loves smashing it out and get your day done, and you go, hey, I'm consistently 3 minutes faster even than the estimation, you can just increase the speed or decrease the speed. And we've had probably 13 or 14 employees of all different ages and, experience, and men, women, young, old, all sorts of stuff. And we've not had any problems with somebody being able to make it work for them, because it's just basically you cover, the little things that can go wrong, and you would calibrate it to your speed. And once you've done it a few times, it pretty much picks it up. But I would agree. I want to just say that I was just as skeptical as everybody else when I first started doing it. I just sort of had to persist. And I said in that podcast that I thought about doing it in 2016, 2017 with an employee, but it was because I was skeptical that I didn't even try. And then in 2020, when my health went downhill, I was like, I can't even leave the house for periods of time. So I can't even give the quoting to these people. So I was like, I don't know, let's just try. And it was like reluctant almost, reluctant and hopeful. And then, yeah, like I said, it was like, oh my goodness, this actually works. So yeah, it's not it was, yeah, I don't have any problems with anyone being suspicious, because that's exactly how I felt.
So what will the quoting part do? Like, will you just type in the square meterage of the area you got to mow? Like, are there other things that you put in there, like the distance from the road or anything like that, or if it's front yard, backyard?
Yes. So if you have a normal job, right, and this is not overgrown, so overgrown will add stuff, but it'll be, you put in your square meters, how many sections it is, and believe it or not, just by putting in the sections, you can pretty accurately predict how many meters of edging there is to do within, it's not spot on, but it's pretty close. So you just put your sections. So you say you got 100 square meters, 3 sections, front and back. Then you can put in, if you have extra walking distance, you would put in, say, like you've got I don't know, say a block of units, and you've got to, park in the car park and walk across 50 meters to get there. You put that in there, and then you put in your obstacles. And then, so obstacles would be large obstacles, small obstacles, and there's descriptions in the app on exactly how they are categorized. And then there is a human element where you can put in what we just call job complications or extra minutes. So if you have a dog that needs tying up, or you need, say you have a flight of stairs, you got to lift them all up or down, things that have nothing to do with mowing, but are relevant to the job. Lots of gates, for example, that you got to open and shut, lock. For us, a lot of the time we'll have a client that has, say, like a lock box with a key to get the gate. You might put 2 minutes in there just to cover your backside for that. And that's it. And they are the 80-20 rule, that there are other little things that you could, what's the word? factor into it, but they make such small differences. And the other thing that we do have, I should say, is you can select the mower you're using. So you could go, it's a 30-inch walk behind rotary, it's a 26-inch cylinder, it's a 21-inch. And we're looking to work with brands. I've been making some phone calls recently where we literally want to say call up Ego and Steel and Greenworks and Bush Ranger and say, hey, look, can you send us a demo 21-inch for 3 weeks, and we will collect all the data points on it, and we'll literally put that brand of mower in, so people can literally pick the exact mower they have and go off that. And with your self-propellers, we can go, which speed are you picking? Do you like to mow a number 3 on a Hyundai HRU 216 or a number 2? And so we've that's not quite ready yet, that specific brand and stuff. But, to be fair, 21 inches is pretty much the same as other 21 inches, unless you've, I don't know, put a jet, engine on there. But that's it. And then with overgrown jobs, there is a little bit of extra stuff to calculate. And that does become a lot more of human interaction. So you would estimate. But as you're putting in the stuff, it shows you how long it's predicting. And so even as you're going through that, you can see, hey, even if for whatever reason the app was inaccurate, you can see, hey, this is saying 47 minutes, but I feel like this is more of a 55-minute job. And you can just put in extra minutes. And then sometimes what happens is you go do it and you get it done in 46. You're like, oh, there you go. Sometimes you go, oh, no, it was 55. I was right, So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Like I'm ridiculously excited about it, even though I'll never have a use for the app. But if I was in the mowing industry, it sounds awesome because you can give quotes to a client on the spot. Like you can just measure it all, put it in your app. This is what it is.
Yeah.
Like so, what I assume you would do when you get it is you'd sort of test it, like for yourself, to get a base on how it works for you, and then once you've got it calibrated right for you, then you can have confidence in it and know. Yeah,
Exactly.
I love the idea, and also I find a lot of the best inventions are by people who sort of need it. Like there's people who have a skin condition that make a skincare thing, because they needed it for them, and then
Yes.
other people have that same issue. So the fact that you're in the industry, knowing how everything works and what all these mowers and machines are, I think it's an awesome idea.
Well, mowing will be the first one that comes out, and that will be the heavy hitter that everybody needs, right? Or everyone's going to use. That's the majority of the work done on the maintenance side. But we did have reticulation and lawn installation on our version. You can't predict. You can to a certain degree with lawn installation, right? Like if it's just a flat 100 square meters and all you're doing is laying turf, right? But the prep side is more challenging. But what we did is we still made it essentially, there's a lot more human element in it, is what I should say. A lot more, say maybe you have a standard rate of like per square meter, this is how long it takes to lay, per square meters, this is how long it takes to prepare. But you can up it and down it. And we didn't do too much. So I don't want to, the mowing side, we tested it over 10,000 jobs because that was a huge part of our business. The turf installation, not so much. So we would like to work on that more. But even with irrigation, we would say we'd go to a job and we'd go, okay, this is how long it takes to irrigation. But we put in there a database that was referenced to Nutrien and Bunnings. And Bunnings specifically, they actually have their certain data like public for apps because it helps them sell more stuff. So we could literally reference, and we didn't quite finish this part of it before we focused on the mowing, but we had at first just an Excel spreadsheet database. But in the future, what we want to do, and this might be a year away, don't get too excited, but we want to actually have a database referenced from the actual websites of like irrigation stores. And you go in there and you say you're doing a quote and you just go, bam, I want 3 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these. And it will reference the website, get the price, put it into the spreadsheet or the, what would you call it, the table in the app. And so you've got, 3 MP rotors heads, 3 pop-up sprinkler bodies, 6 meters of 20 millimeter pipe or whatever you're using. and you put that all in, you put your time in, and it creates it into what is an exportable, either a file that we one day want to zap, either use Zapier or some sort of integration into the CRM you're already using. So if you're using a Jobber or a ServiceMate or Service Sortscape or whatever you're using, literally just paste it into their quoting system or export it as a PDF, and bam, that's your quote done. And so instead of having to go reference the website for parts, and it's harder for smaller businesses. The bigger the business, like the Bunnings, a lot of guys listening to this doing irrigation might go, well, I don't like using Bunnings for irrigation. Well, it's just that bigger businesses do have that data available. But we'd love to essentially just work with brands or like the Nutrients or the Reeses of the world and go, hey, give us your data in spreadsheet form and we'll help you sell more stuff. And hopefully that creates a win-win for us, a win-win for the brand, and then the user just goes click of a button, updated price, bam, also you'll add the system will automatically add your markup to those prices as well. So that's the vision to come, but that's one of the furthest things away.
So that's like 4 or 5 months instead of 2 or 3.
That's probably a year, because it's when we say 1 or 2 months, we're talking about the most common services in the lawn care industry or in the garden maintenance industry. So mowing, mulching, like a general gardening quote where you literally just put in your hours and it calculates a few other things for you, hours and some products and some tip fees. And then the last one will be some pretty basic general spraying. So more of a glyphosate spraying than technical stuff. That's what we want to get out soon to get the heavy hitters out. But we are confident with aeration, top dressing, I said mulching, or a bunch of services that we want to get out. But I would love to, I might be a little bit ambitious, but I would love to have it be able to go, like, say, paving, square meter rates, things like that, where people already have formulas that they are using for those kinds of services. And instead of us doing what we did with, I mean, maybe we can predict it. We don't have 10,000 jobs experience with it, but even just the ability to put it in the app, to put the way you calculate, like, here's your square meter rate. And like I said, if we could reference paving sites for paving costs or, aggregate or whatever you've got to get, if we could do that just to make it easier so you can do it on site, export it PDF, email it while you're there, save you some admin time, even if it's not as powerful as predicting it to the minute, it still probably has a use. I mean, what do you think? You would have a better idea than I do.
Yeah, because it's different quoting style in landscaping compared to doing maintenance because you're more sort of per hour, like because you might be somewhere for a few hours, whereas most of the time, like when I do any quoting, it's all days. Like you're going to be here for a certain amount of days. So if something's going to take me a day and a half, I'll allow 2 days. I'll quote for 2 days because I'm not going to go somewhere for the other half of the day because you've got to pack up and travel and then set up and then pack up again and
Mm-hmm.
it's time to go. So it doesn't need to be per minute accurate. But yeah, that's similar to how most people quote anyway, but just a more drawn out version. They'll work out how many square meters there is, how many square meters they do per day, and then they just sort of gradually work it out like that. So if you've got that entered into an app, my boss had a spreadsheet that was really good. I've still got it, but I just don't use it. But um, if there was like a certain amount of paving and to break everything down and say you need this much concrete, this much crushed rock, this much steel, the,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So it's like just doing that, but in a more professional way.
There's also some with measuring. Have you seen the AI measuring tools that use the camera with soil and things like that? Have you seen videos of this now?
Little bits and pieces of it. I've seen the Moja thing as well, which I've looked into. Well, I'm thinking of
Yeah.
into that, but don't know how accurate they are.
Yeah, I've seen the ads. I've never looked at it, but I've seen there's certain apps where, now I've never used one, but apparently there's ones where you can take a photo of the inside of a room. You just need a reference point. But if you have, say, like a 30 centimeter tile, that is a reference point in there, it can tell you how big the walls are and just use it as a reference and then say this room is 17 square meters.
Hmm.
And there's also apps where you can you pull up your camera as a video and you walk around a sort of a pile of mulch or a pile of soil or something like that, and it will calculate how much volume of soil there is. So it could be like, this is 1.5 cubic meters of soil. And so we've seen those, and like the team that we have are like very high quality. Like there's one of the guys on the teams has a PhD in machine learning from 2009, before AI was even a thing. And so they are looking at all this sort of stuff. And the thing that holds us back is just money, right? It's just time and money. But we would like that for the future, it would be so amazing to just take a photo of a yard with something as a reference point, like a paver or something like that, and it would just go, this is 117 square meters, and you'd be like, wow, and take a couple of photos, talk to the client. And while you're talking to the client for a simple job, not a full landscaping thing, but let's say paving, right? You're talking to the client, you look at it, it's pretty flat, basic stuff, and you can put it in the app, and at the end of it, go, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. Because that would just knock people's socks off. And they'd be like, if it's possible, I don't want to overpromise, but if it was possible, the client would go, man, I'm going with this guy. The other guy took 2 weeks to get back to me on just doing the quote. This guy's got it done. And at a certain point, it doesn't even matter what the price is. You can charge $1,000 more. But this guy just seems like, or, this business seems like they know what they're doing. So that's where I'd love to take it. But, that's the sort of stuff where it's getting out of my specific wheelhouse. So to do that, we'd need a lot of money, and we'd literally be hiring businesses or even just like giving it for free behind the scenes to a bunch of businesses and go, hey, use this and tear us apart. Like, tell us what sucks. Give us all the negative feedback, because we want to know. Yeah, and then we'll fix it, and then we'll give it back to you. We'll fix it, we'll give it back to you. And then maybe one day that will be a reality.
Yeah, I've seen people do measure ups using a drone, and they'll do that. So they'll sort of they know that this part of the house is 6 meters, so they take a photo, including that part of the house within the photo, and then they scale it off that.
Yeah.
The tricky part of that is sort of, if you're not looking straight down, you get a bit of looking on an angle so
Skew.
things are longer. Yeah, a bit of a skew. So it works on sort of smaller properties, but not so much on big ones. Or you sort of need to do a few and you'd need to have accuracy on your drone. But yeah, there's stuff like that already happening.
Yeah, but in the mowing game, like it's so hard to calculate some lawn areas as soon as they're not triangle or square. As soon as you're not doing your basic maths, it's like, man, I'm just guessing. Like, I might be 3 square meters off, and over 70 square meters, that's not bad. But I think there is for certain jobs, there is a flexibility that if there was a bit of skew or inaccuracy, people wouldn't care too much. You just take a photo and you just have a disclaimer, this might be off by 2 or 3% or something, and people go, I don't care. Certain other jobs, no, you need it by millimeter, and maybe that's where your motor and your tape measure come in. But I don't know, but who knows? Maybe in 2 weeks something comes out with AI, and all of a sudden it's like one photo would tell you the meaning of the universe. Who knows?
Possibly not, but there might be a few more months away waiting for that one.
Yeah.
Like, when you decide, oh, I'm going to make this app, like, who did you reach out to? How did you know who to contact for that sort of thing?
I was very blessed that I knew two people. So the first was a guy named Aaron, who I'd known since I was 18, and he is a software whiz. Problem with Aaron was he was too much of a software whiz, and so his company that he worked for, who was actually paying him, his living wage, he was doing a lot of overtime, and he helped. So we made the app. So back up a little bit. The original app that we were using in our business cut a lot of corners, and it was very basic because they're just so expensive. And we were using overseas developers. Language barriers tough, bugs, things not looking great. Like then not everything's lined up, and just stuff. But it worked, right? The formulas worked. So we just put up with it, and you literally could not use that on the app store. Like, it just doesn't work that way. So I contacted Aaron, and he started making some stuff which was so much better. And then it got to a point where he was unavailable to do, or didn't have the time to do what was needed to make it take it to the next level. And I then met a guy named Phil. So I remembered a guy named Phil, and Phil was somebody who used to live a street away from me as I was growing up, and he helped me with my first website. Always had a great relationship with him. Amazing at design, like just amazing at design. And I sent him a message, and I was like, "I've got this idea. I know you're great at design. What do you reckon? Like, could you help me do the design part?" And he goes, "I can help you do more than that because I now run a business that makes applications." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And he was like, "Yeah." And it's like they've worked on stuff, like I said, hundreds of millions of users. And so I just met up with him, and I was like, I can't believe how fortunate I am to know these types of people, because I could go in there as a software idiot and just go, I know like 5% of what you know on this at best, and that's probably 100 times more than what the average guy knows, But I'm like, I'm just presenting this to you. What do you think? And they were like, we actually think this has a lot of legs. Like, we really like this idea. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, that's how it came about.
Yeah, and I like how you're doing it as well, like funding it, like because that's most reasons people stop making apps is because it's too expensive. So
It's
it'd be
crazy
in
expensive.
a perfect world, you'd release it all at once,
Yeah.
all amazing. But yeah, that's could be a big risk.
Yeah. It's going to cost us like the price of a house to make this app. And people don't, not maybe not the nicest house in the Darling Harbour, but like it's it's so expensive to get good software engineers, and it's kind of like it's not that there was any animosity, but it's kind of like a hostage negotiation. It's like you've got to pay them, or you're getting murdered. But it's you don't have any other options. So but it's one of the best things I've ever done, because the golf in skill. Well, is that the gap
Yeah,
in the skill
no,
is
that's all right.
noticeable even by somebody like me, and it's just solving problems and just the way it works. But you've got to. We debated this a lot. Like, to get the quoting side is what people are really excited about, but it's super expensive to make. The product application side, we were like, if we get it out there, at the moment, if you sign up at $6.99 a month, which is essentially nothing in this economy, like you can't even buy a bottle of water. I went to the servo yesterday, and a 1.25 liter bottle of water was $8, and I was like, "What? I'm not charging enough for my app." But you $6.99 was but the point. It was like, if we put that out there, you get 6 months at $6.99. Even if you don't quite use it that much, just download it and pay for it for the sake of giving us the budget to get the quoting out. Like, that's the strategy. Otherwise, it would be like another year before we even had anything of any meaning. Because, like I said, like I'm the budget essentially. So that's the problem. But I can't explain how validating it is to have such a strong release, as in what happened on the weekend. We're 5 days in, and we exceeded all expectations by so much. And it's like, oh, it's such a weight off the shoulders, because if it flopped, you'd be like, damn.
Yeah,
you know
I was surprised that you released it on, or you announced that it was released on when it was only on Apple and not on Android. I
Yeah.
would have thought you'd wait until it was on both and then announce it so everyone can get it at the same time. So was that deliberate?
Well, it gets to a point where it's like, I told you off air, there's a saying that if you're not embarrassed by your first release, you took too long to release it. And there's a part of, with the software stuff, like when you're building a garden, right? If you were talking to the client and you knew exactly what they wanted, right? You can make exactly what they want. But can you imagine if a client came to you, or if you went to the client and you were like, I'm going to build you a garden that I think you would like, right? You want to release it before it's ready. Like, you want to get them in the garden when it's 30% done, and then go, do you want to give me some feedback now? Instead of it being like, I've finished the garden, now come tell me what you think. And so we're like, we're comfortable just releasing it when it's not quite ready. It's not quite there. And I was like, hey, do you think we can get it out on March the 1st? It's a weekend. It's a nice, memorable date. It might be good for us to launch. And they were like, we can definitely get Apple, maybe Android. And I just said, let's not even worry. If we can't get Android and we get it out, it's March the 5th and it came out today, so it's only 5 days wait. But at a certain point, like you got to be okay with making something that's not perfect and letting people critique it and just getting it out there. Otherwise, it'll never get out.
Yeah, I was going to say that there'll be people who have got app ideas and they're just wanting it to be perfect, and then it ends up costing too much money, and then they do nothing with it.
Yeah. So, but like I said, the support has been surprising. I think we said it off air, but I don't want to mention how many people, but we got we had internal bets within the team, and we exceeded half the team's expectations for the first month in the first day. Like
That's because
literally
they
the
guessed
first day.
2 downloads.
Yeah, they guessed 1.5 downloads, and we got 3. And I like, yeah, no, but these are experienced people with apps, and yeah, the audience was very like, oh, this is a great idea, let's go get it, and I'm super thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and like that's the good thing about building the contacts that you have as well. Like I just recently joined the LMCA, the Lawn Mowers Contractors, I think it's of Australia. And
On
that's
Facebook.
yeah, that's been an exciting development because I've heard a lot about it, about some of the wild comments in there, and hasn't disappointed.
No, it's very entertaining.
Some people are so aggressive for no reason.
I got a message last night. There's a guy who's I joke that he's one of my best friends. He's very negative towards the stuff that I do. I got a message last night from somebody who was like, just like I'm quite respectful on there, but he was ripping into him like this guy's, swearing and everything. And I was like, he's gotten under your skin more than me, and you're like, he's the one that got at me. There's some crazy, but it's entertaining as some of these
Yeah,
posts. It's the best thing on Facebook, in my opinion.
yeah, that's wild. Some people. So you're still doing your lawn maintenance business as well while this
Yeah,
is going on.
yes, I am. My wife has taken over a lot of the day to day stuff, and she's actually doing a pretty good. I mean, she's been helping out in the business administratively for a while, and but she's doing some pretty cool, like managing a lot of the day to day stuff and doing a really good job of it. So that's freed me up a bit. But yeah, we still have the business. Have no intention of moving on from that. Um, Still do obviously the podcast. We released the course as well, and I'm having a baby in the middle of the year, so I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, a bit going on.
Just a bit.
Yeah, I took over the business the same year that we built our house and got married as well. So it's yeah, might as well just condense it all into the same year.
I think you and I are the same though. Like the podcast is not a job, but people see it as a job.
Sometimes it feels like a job.
Well, you do your editing. I pay an editor now, so
It's more just about getting people on.
I mean, you can have me on 15 times. Just, maybe what happens is whenever either one of us is like we're out of guests, hit up the other person.
You want to be 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly.
Half
And then you
of
end
it's
up.
my fault because I don't message people. I think I say on the weekend I think all right, I need to get someone for this week or next week. So I'll message
Yeah,
all these people. I've got a massive list of people to message. I just don't message them until it's too late, and then yeah, and then
I've
I'll
got.
message one person, and then they don't get back to me, and then it's too hard.
Have you done a lot of like batching of stuff, like one day smash them out, and then you've got a month of content?
I've done like weeks of that. I've like once or twice, and that's awesome. But then I get comfortable and just don't do any, and then I think, oh, I need someone this week. I better get Luke on.
Yep. Well, I'm always keen for a chat. I've done this twice where I've done 4 podcasts in one day, and it's a shocking day, like because your brain's switched on the whole time. But the rest of the month, I'm thanking myself because you can. But I also like it depends on the season. Like September, October, November is hard, and that's when people want to listen as well. So I feel like both things. Like people want 2 episodes a week if you can do it, because they're so busy and they love having something in their in their ears, helping them get through the day. But then you're like, man, I'm so busy too. But yeah, but no, I a lot of the work stuff, like the app stuff, is exciting. The doing a podcast is exciting. So even though there's a crazy number of hours to get it all done, it's yeah, it doesn't drain me like it might other people.
Yeah. Yeah, like when I initially did the podcast, I was going to do an episode a fortnight, but I loved it so much that I'd do it. one a week, and that's been nearly 4 years, I think, been doing it. So a bit
Yeah,
crazy.
well, I I would love to do 2 episodes a week, but I think at the moment, for the last 2 months, I'm kind of like one every week in a day or two on average. But the reason I'd love to do it is that the industry is so broad and so many people, like I've just found that people just love, even if the episode is not necessarily the most attractive, like it's not the most hot button subject at the time. For example, I've got a bee scientist coming on soon, and it's like I'm really interested to find out about bees, and people are not waking up in the morning. Some are, but most of my audience not waking up in the morning going, "Do you know what? I'd really love to hear about the 2,000 native bee species that are in existence." And but they hear you, and it's like, you know what? That'll help me get through the day. But what I'd love to do is one business focused episode and one practical sort of technique or garden knowledge episode. So like a bee episode, and then the story of how someone runs their business, the next one, and then an episode on like lawn maintenance from, I don't know, a stadium turf manager, and then the next one after that is a guy who runs a business with 200 employees, or like that's where I would love to do that, but it's very challenging to fit that in.
Yeah, it's a good mix though because you don't want to have all your episodes the same. Like, yes, you're going to have
Mm-hmm.
some hardcore fans who that's all they want and they love that, but you're going to reach a broader audience and also educate more people because if they come to you for you know a type of podcast, they're going to also listen to the other types and then they'll learn something and increase their knowledge. And that's one of the good things about listening to podcasts is you listen to episodes you normally wouldn't listen to, and then you think, oh, that's actually interesting. Like I listened to a podcast with Joe Griggs, and she was talking about bees on it, and I found it fascinating because if you listen to someone who's passionate about it, then
Yeah.
it's a good episode.
Which podcast was that? Was that Charlie's podcast?
No, it was Better Homes and Gardens did one with Pete Calhoun as well. I don't
Yeah.
know if it was just him or if it was someone else, but I think it was just him. But yeah, he had Joe Griggs on, and yeah, because she's got her own veggie garden at home, like a decent old veggie garden and bees and stuff. And yeah, it was fascinating hearing her talk about them.
I'd love to do more tours as well, but they are so expensive. So, because we've done a tour of Adelaide Oval, we've done a tour of the Roy Gripskin Sons, which is like the biggest mower spare parts supplier. So they have, I think it was 18,000 different types of spare parts and like hundreds of each. We did a tour of that facility. We've done a tour of a seedling or the seedling factory here that does 70 million seedlings a year, and a tour of a compost facility. And they are just the most fun for me. But you have to dedicate an entire day and you have to pay a cameraman, and the editing's about 7 times as much as what it is for a normal podcast. And then you go to a brand and go, would you cover the cost of this? And they go, we'll think about it. And you go, say no more. All right. I got it. I understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's where it's a mix of doing it for your own enjoyment and doing it for a business. Like that, those lines blur a bit.
Oh yeah, we did a tour of gyms, and gyms themselves did all the editing and had the cameraman on site and everything. That did so well. That got like 13 or 14,000 views on YouTube, which for me
Yeah.
is huge, right? And for them, they were like over the moon. They re-released it on their channel, got about 400 views. And I was like, yeah, suck it, because you guys got 100,000 subscribers. And for whatever reason, my title and thumbnail, just exactly the same video, but people liked it. But so they were quite happy, but they didn't pay anything because they did it all themselves. But no, it's super expensive. Although, if I can get to Sydney, Holman, no, sorry, that's not right. Hoselink started making their hoses, the hose reels in Australia, and they were like, "We'd like you to do a tour of that." So that could happen. That could happen one day. Or maybe I should go to Victoria, and I'll get you along to one of them as well. We should do something exciting together.
Are you going to? You're coming down for the garden show, aren't you? Are you still doing?
No, No,
Uh,
I've decided not. I've decided against that. I'm too good for it, you know. It's just
yeah, you got a bit
no,
other stuff going on.
no. That's why it's really because of the other stuff. But I'd love to go to Mifkus. I'd love to. See, here's the problem. If I go to Mifkus, my wife is mad about F1. And if people haven't joined the dots, Silverstone Gardening, my business, is named after the racetrack in England. So I'm also an F1 fan. Um, I could not get away with going to the Mifkus on my own, so close to F1, and then not taking my wife, one, to a garden show, and two, to F1. So I've kind of got to commit to a 2 week holiday in Melbourne. And I have family there who have what's the word? A wing of the house for guests. So they're like, you can stay here for free. Like it's like, but practically speaking, with a pregnant wife, even next year with three under the age of 4, and it'll be yeah, it's not happening anytime soon.
It's a nice flight over, or you can drive. Even better.
Yeah, and this is Swift.
Yeah.
We'll, we'll get back in Taylor Swift and we'll drive the 2009 little red Swift over again.
And last time you were on was when, like, it was about doing a tour, but also we were talking about the business course that you'd released a couple of months earlier. So that's been, what was it, nearly 12 months, is it?
Yeah, very, very close. 3 weeks after 12 months.
You released that on April Fool's Day,
I did, yes.
a business course
12,
on April Fool's
yeah,
Day.
yeah, a business course that costs $800. I released it on April's Fool's Day. And it's like, that's not the best choice, you know? Like, you know, people think
But
the price is a joke, you know, so I'm emphasizing that point by the day that it got released. But yeah,
how's that going?
that's been that's actually been one of the more meaningful things that I've done. I told you off air that I wanted the price high because I wanted only people who are really serious. Because we have a group, and a big part of it is a Facebook group. It's an exclusive Facebook group for people who get into it, so they can ask questions. And but the group has been so good, and the feedback that I'm getting from it is really like it's really cool because essentially what it is for people who have started out or who are early on in business and maybe they struggle with the business side, but they're really good at the gardening side. And it's essentially what I would have told myself at 19 when I started my business to shortcut the first 3, 4, 5 years. And it's kind of maybe there's a little bit of secret sauce, a little bit of magic dust in there, but most of it is just really common sense, practical business experience, but specific to the maintenance part more than landscaping. So I don't want to oversell it on here, but like just practical knowledge. And we've put in a money back guarantee. You got 1 week. You can technically finish the course, then tell me you didn't like it, and I'll give you your money back. Like, we don't even ask questions because for me, the last thing I want to do is someone to buy it, not enjoy it, and then have the $800 stop them from investing it into something else. Like they could have spent it on a different machine or marketing or whatever. So, but yeah, the feedback, like I was telling you before, we had a lady who started her business in August. And I think it was in October. She sent me a message saying, "Hey, look, I've got an opportunity to do a bunch of stuff at $60 an hour, a lot of different sites, you know, so it would be, you know, quite a lot of work. What do you think?" And we teach that you should be getting at least $100 an hour, like at least 100. And she, you know, was a little, I wouldn't say desperate, but getting a little hungry, you know. And I said, look, back yourself. I don't think you'll regret it. And we had that conversation. And last week she posted in the group that she averaged over $130 an hour for the entire month of September. And she worked less hours than she thought she would be doing. And she earned more money for the whole month than she thought she'd be doing at basically any point in her business journey. And she's 7 months in, 8 months in, or something like that. And like, that's just so like, and the comments just all encouraging in the group. And it's, so that's like super meaningful because you know, I get a little bit, there's a part of an emotion that wells up in me because I know how difficult the first 3, 4 years was for me. And I just was blind and I just kept making all these mistakes. And it's so exciting to be like this lady and so many others just skipped all that pain that I got. And, maybe who knows? They're having next Christmas that comes around, the kids get bigger presents and they actually have a holiday and they make memories as a family. And there's more family barbecues because, mum and dad aren't working 75 hours a week to make ends meet. And that's been really cool. That's, yeah, one of the better things I've done.
And you also had someone on your podcast in January who had a lot of success from doing the course, hadn't he?
Yeah, I think he was one person who was like, he had all the kindling set up already in a sense, and the lighter, and there's a bit of fuel on there, and he just needed that little spark. So I don't want to take too much credit, but this guy, he had been working for a lawn mowing business, and that business went broke. But he had quite a few years' experience doing the exact job, and he just started his business in December of 2023. I think he bought the course in the middle of 24, so 6 months in. And by the end of 2024, he had done more than $40,000 in 1 month. And, you should see the jobs that he's doing. And he's in a country town. He's in Toowoomba, I think. So not a big city center doing stuff for millionaires. He found a niche with a certain type of ride-on work, and he's just super efficient. He's doing a fantastic job of it. And the thing about this guy, which is just amazing, is he didn't do school after year 8. And he is pretty average, if not terrible, at written, stuff. So, and he would admit that. He'd be the first. That's not an insult to him. Like, that's just telling the truth. And we had a conversation where I was just one of the things I say in the course is and this is common sense for people, but I'm like, just use Chat GPT, right? Like a lot of people would, but he'd not thought of that yet, and so he just took that to heart. And you'll see some of his Facebook posts, and when Chat GPT wrote it, and when he wrote it, because it's one of them is spelt correctly. But the fact that the guy who didn't pass year 8, didn't even think about starting his business, was kind of forced to do that, works his butt off. Like, he deserves so much credit. I think he's 95% of his success, and the 5% was a little bit of knowledge that he got from us, but he's killing it. And, and it wasn't, I would like to say as well, it's not 1 month that he hit those sorts of numbers. Like that's what his regular turnover is now. So that's insane.
And are they the type of people it's targeted to? So people sort of starting out in the business more so than people who've been doing it for 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I think if you're 5 or 10 years in, the stuff that we're talking about is things like, how do you win a good client? How do you present yourself? How do you schedule your week? How do you make it really efficient? And even just like little things like, how do you not burn yourself out? Like, one of the things that we preach in the course is like, never book a full week, right? Or never book a full fortnight. So the way we do it is either you do if you want to work 5 days a week, what you do is you book out 4.5 days. Or if you want to work 10 days a fortnight, you book out 9, because things are wrong. Weather happens, and if you book yourself out, you work your Saturdays. And if you look at it and you reverse engineer it, people book themselves 5 days and they look at the money they're going to make and they go, fantastic. And then, 3 months later, they go, why didn't I make the money I expected? And I was like, oh, because things went wrong. But if you calculate for things to go wrong and then you plan for things to go wrong, then you will hit the targets you expect because you've done your pricing accordingly. And that's the sort of stuff we teach. Like, okay, here's how you actually work out your pricing. Plan for things to go wrong. Schedule for things to go wrong. Schedule time to do your admin. Because if you smash it on admin, this is so underrated. If you kill it on the admin side, you can charge 5, 10, 20% more, especially on small jobs, sometimes 30, 40, 50% more if you're doing, say, a $70 job compared to a $100 job, something like that, right? 50% more basically. But if you kill it on the admin, certain clients don't care about the $30 because they go, Sally is reliable or Tim is just awesome to deal with. And I had the $30, I don't care. And that's the sort of stuff we teach. So a lot of people 10 years in, they might go, hey, there's some golden nuggets in there. There's some real secrets in there on how to run efficiently and different things. And we teach as well how with my website, we get 20 to 30,000 hits a month. And we literally just show the process on how we did that. But most of it is it's not actually rocket science stuff. And we don't want to try and pretend it is, but it's all concise into one place, industry specific. And again, we priced it high because we only want serious people to buy, and the group is super helpful.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I love what you're doing as well. Like it's all kind of come about from um, not being like from your illness and not being able to do what you wanted to do. So rather than just sort of say, "Woe is me," and just find something else or go on the dole or just do anything basic, you actually sort of taken it head on and stayed in the industry you enjoy doing, and now you've got
Yeah.
these other arms to the business as well. So I think it's awesome what you're doing.
I think it's a strange thing for me. Like we talked about, like for me, business has actually been a lot of struggle because I basically didn't know how to run a business for about 4 years. And I was really good at certain stuff. I was really good at getting clients, but I didn't know how to price.
I'm at
I was
16 years so far.
oh dear. And I saw your videos of you cleaning out the warehouse and then getting to the end and they were like, you're not allowed to have concrete in the back.
Yeah,
That
that's
wasn't that's a bit of an expensive mistake in and of itself, isn't it? All that time.
well,
But anyway,
that was for the landscaping tool, so I'll get my money back on that hopefully.
you will definitely will. And people should support that in the same way. But I basically didn't know how to run a business for 4 years. I had 2 years where I did really well solo, and then I got sick. And it's been 5 years since then. I'm 11 years into business. And the 5 years, we've had crazy wins and crazy losses at the same times. Like we did a year where we did 5,000 individual services. We called all the clients regularly, and our average rating out of 10 was 9.1 or 9.2. It was like people with really good services. But in that year, we made essentially, well, I think we lost money in that year actually because we had our most senior staff member on workers' compensation. And that just stuffed the business. A long story, right? But it's like the wins and the losses. We've had times where we won contractors that were well over $100,000 a year, and then you do the work and you realize it's like, I've not accounted for just a little bit of stuff, 2%, 3%, 4%, right? And then maybe I've underquoted a little bit again, 1 or 2% underquoted on a couple of those things, and all of a sudden it's like 7% less. And on a say $100,000 job, that's $7,000 a year, and and I think that's where it feels real to me when somebody's like I got a message today. Someone's like, I've just got an opportunity to quote a school oval and I have no idea how to do it. I'm like, I remember doing that. And I just sent him a couple of messages in back and forth and try and help him out with the quote. But it feels real to me. And if they send me back saying I won it, like I'll remember that first time that I won my first school oval, which I significantly undercharged and didn't make money off. But I remember it, and I remember that moment. I'd be like, "Oh my goodness, I did that!" And so that's why it's so satisfying. I got sidetracked there. What did you even ask?
Can't remember, but I was just getting lost in your story and thinking of similar things like that I did. Like I remember, like when I got a display home, I was going to do the landscaping there. I thought, imagine how many people are going to see this, and then you realise display homes are horrible because they don't want to spend any money on it, so it's just all cheap and yeah. But yeah, it is. It's. I don't often think back to the early days, but yeah, it's good to think back on how far you've come.
Yeah, there's some. Yeah, I remember some moments where I thought I just won the lottery. Essentially, I remember we won a contract. I'll say the business name because it's years ago now. We won a contract at a place called Tianqi Lithium, which is the largest lithium refinery in the southern hemisphere. And at the time, they had spent $300 million building the place. And we went and we quoted this place, and it was a 60,000, I think, plus extras a year. And I was like, this is awesome. This is amazing. A year later, I didn't want the job anymore. And we actually walked away from the extension. It was a 1 year contract with a 1 year extension. And the reason was it just wasn't, it was horrible work, and it was a lot of paperwork and very, anyways, just a lot of weeds, really. But I remember when I won that contract, we went out for dinner and we celebrated. And, you think you've got, this amazing deal and you get so excited. but it was two or three little things to look out for. I had a guy message me last night where he was like, "Hey, I'm a single dad. I need help to take less time at work." And I was like, "What are you charging?" So I'm charging $100 an hour, and I want to hire somebody and want to give them the work. And I was like, "Look, mate, I had that idea back in 2016, and it was the dumbest thing I ever did because an employee, if you're doing pretty good, if you're doing excellent, if you're doing amazing, you'll make 20% off an employee. If you're doing good, you'll make 10, right? Most guys, they're not, right? So if you're charging $100 an hour, the best you could hope for would be $20 an hour from that employee. Realistically, if you're busy with your kid, let's say it's $10 an hour, why not just raise your prices $10 an hour and save yourself all the hassle of not hiring, But I said to him, it's like, and if you want to work less, why don't you raise your price $50 an hour? And the reality is he probably can't sustain his business at $50 an hour of an increase. But the question is, what's harder, to find the jobs that could sustain $50 an hour increase, or to find an employee who can work unsupervised full time on their own and do all the jobs the same level of quality you can? Which one's easier? Probably raising your prices, and you make a lot more money. And that's just born straight out of like all the pain and frustration that I had 2016, 2017, hiring unsupervised employees, realizing, like we said before, they don't know how to quote. And why would they? Because you didn't train them. And things go wrong, and you're limited on time because you're working yourself, and all these problems happen, and it just doesn't work out how you think. Yeah, business is tough. Have you noticed? Have you noticed that after 16 years?
I haven't noticed it myself. I find it quite easy, but I've had people on the podcast mention that they struggle. So yeah, they have. I have heard that can be an issue. Last question for you, Luke. Who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
You've asked me this twice before. I should have prepared.
I don't know if I asked that last time because sometimes when I get someone on the second time, I forget to ask.
Who would be a good person that you haven't gotten on? Do you know what? I'm going to say someone a little bit left field. He's a CEO of the compost facility that we went to and we did a tour of, but he's actually a scientist as well. And he was the biggest soil nerd I've ever talked to. But he wasn't a nerd, if you get what I mean. Like I just wanted to keep listening to what he had to say. And his name's Greg Watts, and he's the CEO of Seawise, which is, yes, a soil and compost business over here. So that's one person. That's left field. Is that in your wheelhouse?
Not so far, but he sounds electric, so I'll definitely.
I'd just like to say as well, someone to avoid would be Ashley James.
I wonder why your face was getting red during this episode because you were bursting by not mentioning his name yet.
No interest in him at all. Just for me, somebody who, whenever I hear his name, my skin crawls. So if you could avoid any interaction with him, I think it would be just good for the universe.
Yeah, I think he'd appreciate that too.
Actually, he would.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on again. Really appreciate your time, and you're loving what you're doing, and looking forward to seeing how crazy successful this Moqo app goes.
Thanks for having me on just to talk about everything that I do to make money. So, I don't know, this is just product placement for however long this podcast went for.
Just short of an hour. So, yeah.
So thanks for being a good friend. And if you've made it to the end of this, well done. I appreciate you listening to it.